Super casual. All right. So, Emma, welcome to the
Hi.
podcast. I'm thrilled to have you to chat about Bloomfield Beauty Co., everything that you and your sister have done over the last few years. I know that you both brought home an award recently, the Prince Edward County Employer of the Year Award. So,
Mhm.
congratulations. It's honestly probably such an honor. It's such a big award, an accolade to bring home. So, how did that make you feel bringing that home?
Oh gosh, it was so exciting and overwhelming at the same
Yeah.
time. Um, we work really hard on trying to be great bosses, and it just felt very meaningful to us. We It was also just like such a beautiful event that they put on. As you know, you were there,
Yeah.
and so it was just a really nice feeling. And we were up against some amazing businesses in the county, and just felt very lovely because we work with a small team of women, and so to know that to be recognized for something that we take so seriously was really heartwarming, to be honest.
Yeah.
As you know, I cried through the entire speech. Just like
Which
was
is totally
not
normal.
didn't really have anything prepared. It felt like we didn't even really know if there were going to be acceptance speeches because they've never
Right.
done these awards in person. They had always
Hmm.
been virtual in the last few years. So we didn't prepare anything. And they called our name, and instantly I started crying. And my sister's like, "No, you still are the one that's going to say something." And I was like, "But you're like a better public speaker than me." And she's like, "Just go, just go." And so she was kind of shooing me towards the mic,
That's so cute.
and I couldn't stop myself from crying. I mean, I only had like maybe 20 seconds before I had to say something. So,
Yeah.
anyways, it was a lovely night. You can tell who all the empathetic criers are in the crowd because they kept coming up to me for the rest of the night saying, "You made me cry, and you made me like, you had me like tears coming down my face too." So, anyways, it was a really lovely experience. It was just so nice to have a beautiful night to celebrate all these amazing businesses in the county, and they took it super seriously and made us all feel very special. So it
Yeah.
was great.
No, it was a really cool night. So you and your sister Annie started this business in 2018, right? So
Mhm.
what did that look like? Where did that come from? Where were you guys like, you know what, let's just do this?
Well, at the time, so my sister Annie is a nurse practitioner, and she's the medical director for the spa, and we are part owners together. So we each own half of the business,
Cool.
and I handle the business side of things. And at the time, I was working for Queen's University back in 2017. I'd been there for a few years in the communications department, and I was basically a speechwriter. I was
You were a
speechwriting.
speechwriter,
I was
but
a
you were,
speechwriter.
that's too funny. You're a speechwriter, but you were like, I don't want to give
I
the speech.
know, I know. I can write them. I don't like actually getting up and speaking in front of 200 people makes me really
You're like, I'll
nervous.
write it for you, but
Exactly, exactly. And of course, I had nothing prepared.
too funny.
So I used to write speeches for the principal of Queens and the dean of health sciences. That was sort of my job there for 5 years.
Okay.
And Annie had gone on to a primary care role in Prince Edward County. She'd been hired by the Prince Edward Family Health Team.
Is your family
Um,
from here? Is that where,
we
are you
grew up
guys
in
from here?
Kingston. We grew up in
Okay, okay,
Kingston. So
cool.
yeah, so not far. But
Hmm.
so anyways, while she was working as a nurse practitioner for the family health team, the physician that she was working alongside her, they both went to do training in a Botox and filler course. And immediately Annie fell madly in love with it. She's always sort of had like an interest in aesthetics. She growing up, she always wanted to be a hairstylist. She always loves doing people's makeup before we go out, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and so she was immediately drawn to it. And after a few years of doing like evening clinics at their medical facility, she approached me and said, like, "I want to do this more. The county is filled with these groups of women who are looking for fun things to do, and there's not really a big spa to accommodate them. There's several smaller spas." And she's like, "I think there's an opportunity here. Would you help me open a spa?" And I jumped at the opportunity, really, like I always deep in my heart knew I wanted to be my own boss. But I didn't really have an idea that I could really go for it. I had started a couple of years before that my own graphic design company,
Fun.
and I loved doing that. But you know, you're on your own. You're in an office. Like I was just working on it in the evenings. So this felt way bigger, way more exciting. And it was Mother's Day of 2017, and my mom, our mom, babysat my kids so that we could write our business plan. And we spent one day jotting down this business plan, you know, like maybe like 8 or 10 pages. Um, and a week later, we found this building in Bloomfield on MLS and put in an offer. And our banker was like,
Wow.
You're not ready.
That
We
was
don't have
fast.
anything lined up. And we were just like, yeah, but we found the perfect space and we want to go for it. So, like, how fast can we make this happen?
Hmm.
And, you know, we were open by January of 2018. So it
Wow,
happened
that's
very
crazy.
quickly. And
Yeah.
we had no experience working in spas. I mean, Annie had been doing the medical aesthetics things for a couple of years, but really we were learning as we went.
Yeah, honestly, it's like a great testament to anyone who has an idea and just wants to like take that leap. Just freaking go for it. Would you
Yeah.
recommend that? Or are you looking back and you're like, oh my God, I wish we waited. I wish we did things differently. Like, how do you feel now that you kind of can look back and see, the impulsive decision that you made? Or maybe it wasn't necessarily impulsive. It could have been like just like a general confidence that you had within your idea and your partnership with your sister.
I mean, Annie and I have a great relationship. We're very close. And so over that time, like even though it happened really quickly, we were together so much, we were always talking about, you
Right.
know, how we were going to roll it out. I don't know if I would have done it any differently because I feel like the having that fast timeline really like kept the momentum going.
Hmm.
We got the building, you know, towards the end of October, and we gave ourselves 10 weeks to renovate the building from a cafe slash restaurant into a medical spa slash day spa. And that was very stressful
Yeah, I
because
bet.
we were doing 90% of the work on our
Oh,
own.
wow. Good for you guys.
And with our families. So we just said,
Hmm.
like, don't book anything over Christmas. We are renovating a building in
Yeah,
Bloomfield.
Merry Christmas. We
Merry
bought a building and
Christmas,
you're all
Happy
helping
New
us.
Year. Yeah. Happy New Year, your New Year's Eve. Our New Year's Eve was with our partners at the spa and we painted until 2 a.m. Like we
I
took
love
5 minutes
that.
off to count down to midnight and have a glass of champagne and then we went back to work.
Yeah.
Um, for us, like we always have that mentality that if we don't understand how to do something, we'll just learn.
Yeah, you figure it out.
Um, Figure it out on our own. There's lots of resources out there to help you with that sort of thing. We also have like an amazing team of people around us who we rely on for advice, whether that's our lawyers, our accountants. About a year into the business running, we hired like spa and wellness consultants who were very helpful. And
Mm.
and that was like we had sort of hit the ground running, and about a year in we could see maybe where our gaps in our knowledge were starting to show, and so that's where we really leaned on having expert advice. um, and that really set us on a like reset the pace for us in a way. So I don't know if I would have done it any differently. I feel like, you know, we had a good base knowledge between the two of us. We're very much like divide and conquer. Like Annie handles the medical side of things, and she's the one who did, you know, extensive research into the skincare and the products that we bring in and all the treatments that we should be providing. And then I handled like the financials and this, you know, the branding and all of that. So we really just like split up the work. And then some of the fun stuff we did together, like decorating the spa and kind of working on the look and feel together.
Yeah, that's so good. And honestly, such a lesson to just know where your strengths lie. I think it's really cool that, entrepreneurs do wear all these hats, especially in the beginning, to understand like what it's like to kind of do everybody's job and just really understand the business from every angle. But at the end of the day, like you will get bottlenecked if you don't use your resources and
Mm-hmm.
other professionals or experts to get you to the next level, right? So the fact that you
Totally.
guys are relying on that team and relying on each other too, and understanding where your expertise lie, I think is a great thing for anyone to know when starting a business. Because like, yes, you can jump in head first, you won't know a lot of things, you're going to learn a lot of things, but then if you want to really take that business to the next level, I think that's where it's important to kind of lean on the experts. And I feel the same way with my business. It's like, I started off as a graphic designer, I started a creative agency. So in the beginning, I used my graphic design skills and, my presentation skills and my project management skills to get everything started. But then it gets to a point where like you just can't do it all,
Mm-hmm.
and then to bring in people that you really trust to support you to be able to grow has been huge for me. So I know that's really difficult too. You mentioned to me earlier that you had a lot of anxiety in the first year, especially when like leaving the spa and being able to kind of trust that things would run okay without you.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like in that first year? And could you talk about, I guess, where that anxiety stemmed from and how you were able to get over it?
Yeah, I actually started to feel kind of anxious about the spa as soon as we bought the building. So it wasn't
Yeah.
even the first year of operations as much as it was like, do I had a lot of imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I say I wouldn't do it any differently. That would be a nice part to not have to go through again. But I knew that I just like I knew that it was attached to the spa because as soon as I would cross over the bridge to go back home to Kingston, I was living in Kingston at the time for the first few years. As soon as I would cross over the bridge, I would start to feel this like pressure on my chest.
Mm,
It felt like someone was sitting on my chest. And I'd get these like short breaths. And then as soon as I would go back the next day over that bridge, the anxiety would disappear because I knew I had time to control the different variables and work on the to-do list of getting this place
mm-hmm.
open. I was hoping it would go away the day we opened, but it didn't. It stuck around for like a good 6 months, and I think
Yeah.
that was a lot of I would get anxious every time I ran a client through at the cash. Like I almost felt guilty about taking their money. And I was
Mm,
like, we're not overpriced. We're in line with what everyone else charges. I have to
right.
pay my staff like a decent living wage. So I knew all of these things. I still
Mm-hmm.
couldn't let go. Like I had no control. I felt like I didn't have any control over that like anxiety phase for me. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a full year of kind of having that feeling. So I would say it was about 6 months into operation when I felt very comfortable running the front on my own. I had finally quit my job at Queen's by that time. So in the beginning, I was working 3 jobs. And so I think I was just like really
Overworked. Yeah.
overworked and
Yeah.
wasn't giving myself enough time to like reset every night or every day. Like so basically I was working at Queen's University from Monday to Thursday. I'd go home every night and work on my graphic design business because I had like a waiting list of clients at that point. Um, and then on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would be at Bloomfield Beauty Company. And then on Monday, the spa would run without me there. And in that first like 6 months, we were only open 4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the spring when I was like, okay, I need to quit my job.
Yeah.
I need
It's
to
too
quit my
much.
job at Queen's because I need to be able to open the spa another day or two and not worry. And, I was just like really stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was a tough time. And it eventually melted away. I think it just took me 6 months to really feel comfortable
Yeah, I
running
think
that
it sounds like it
business,
came from like the
knowing the ins and
confidence.
outs.
Yeah, like the
Totally.
confidence of actually doing it. Like I feel like your anxiety, at least from what you were saying, it looks like it stems from like the fear of the unknown, that
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, like you said. And then like once you finally got a hang of things, you're like, wait a second, I could do this.
I
I'm
can do
fine. Who
this.
am I
Yes,
kidding?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was just I just needed to prove it to myself,
Mm-hmm.
like I just needed that it always I always every time I've ever changed jobs in my life, I feel like it takes me a good 6 months to feel super confident in that role.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
this one
Yeah.
was no different. It was like a 6 month window, and then I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know all of the tricks to like working the point of sale system or the booking system, and I know how to deal with a difficult client, or I can handle this staffing issue or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a good 6 months before that anxiety like melted. It was a full year and a good 6 months into actually running the spa day to day.
For sure. And as the years go on too, like you learn so much. If I think back to when I first started Nomad Creative, anytime that there was like a little issue with a client, the anxiety was real. Like my heart would start like palpitating, like I
Mm-hmm.
get nervous. Like the last thing you want to do is get on that call because you're afraid of like what they're going to say. And in the end, it's never so bad. And like it's not anything that you can't handle, but it's about like learning how to manage those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that I still don't sometimes feel those nerves today, but it's like it'll happen for like 3 seconds, that like initial kind of adrenaline, right? That hits. And then
Yeah.
you're like, okay,
As opposed
it's
to like three
fine.
days.
Yeah, exactly. Or like a week or like
Yeah.
whatever, where you're like dreading having the conversation. You like
Mhm.
postpone the call. Now it's like, okay, like I'm available in 2 hours. Let's get on the phone and like
Yeah.
nip it in the butt.
Yeah.
And just being able to like address those things, like over the years, it's become easier to deal with them. It's never fun, when there are issues and things that you have to address, but at least you kind of learn how to navigate those conversations differently. So whether it's with a client or with staff, like it is challenging to, as a boss, have to have those conversations, but they're so, so, so important. And
Hmm.
without them, it's like you kind of lose that integrity within your business.
Totally.
But I kind of want to go back to one thing that you said that kind of resonated with me, because you're like, oh, when I was first charging people at the cash, I was feeling guilty because of like the price of my services. And you're like, yeah, like this is what it's worth. Like, people, I shouldn't feel guilty about charging this amount of money. And I feel like sometimes I felt that too in the beginning, where it's like, am I charging too much? Are people not, choosing to sign with us because we're too expensive? But it's really a matter of like finding your value and like believing in that value and that worth too, right? So like,
Totally.
how did you finally get to the point where you just like, was it a matter of trust? Was it a matter of, you know, like what did that look like, accepting the fact that, yeah, my services are priced maybe a little higher than other spas in the area because we're luxury, because we offer X, Y, and Z? Like, did you get pushback? How did you kind of deal with those feelings?
I mean, I think like some, when you're new and you're opening in a smaller area that isn't used
Mm-hmm.
to having maybe that type of service or that level of service, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
know what to expect, there's always going to be a bit of pushback in the beginning. I think we still get it every once in a while, but it's pretty rare because, we have
Yeah.
an established clientele at this point. But,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who are like, oh, like, $65 for a pedicure, like that's exorbitant. And I'm like, it's not really though. Like you're getting one-on-one service.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like going to a restaurant and you're paying $65 for a meal, but that server is serving 6 tables. That person is giving you their undivided attention for one full hour. They're talking to you, you're having a personal conversation with them. They're not getting up and walking away and helping 10 other people. And so it's very labor intensive. And I think it just took me a while to like see what our expenses were and realize like I need to charge this in order to help my
Yeah.
business survive. And so that's the reality. And we kind of train all of the staff on how to have those conversations with people when they say like, oh, that's a crazy amount, I would never pay that. We have medical grade supplies, medical grade skincare.
Mm-hmm.
We pay our staff very well. We have all of these different incentives for them. We have a benefits program. We have, like it's all these little things add up.
Yeah.
Prince Edward County is a really expensive place to be and operate. And so I don't, it doesn't bother me anymore. Like I can hold my own in that conversation, and I know the
Yeah.
staff can as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it just took me 6 months to come to that realization. Like, I don't need to feel bad about this anymore. Like we are really competitively priced with anyone, who's operating in Belleville, Kingston, the rest of the county, even Toronto. Like
Mm-hmm.
we compete on that same price point. And so really the value add for us is we're providing you with this like really beautiful space that you can come to. Our services are top tier. The staff are very well trained. We've traveled the world to get like our level of training.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't feel guilty about it anymore. Sometimes you have those conversations, but eventually you have to let it go or it'll eat you alive.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you can rationalize it and there is, you know, a level of understanding between the client and why they're paying what they're paying, then I feel like people are more comfortable doing that. And at the end of the day, like you said, there will always be people that push back, but the way that I see it is like that's not your client. You know, if they don't
Totally.
have the budget or if they're complaining about the price, then they're not your client, and that's okay because you can't have everybody be your client. That's why we have target
100%.
audiences, right?
100%. 100%.
So
And our spot, like we know that our spot isn't
yeah.
for everyone. It's,
Yeah.
we would like to make it accessible. But
Hmm.
if it's not your style and you get there and you feel like maybe you didn't get your money's worth, or, I'm happy to have those conversations or explain the price point, or,
Hmm.
if it's a matter of like, we do some pro bono services for people who maybe, have, a scar or like some sort of trauma that we can help treat, in terms of like, or a facial condition like Bell's palsy or something like that. We try and help people along if it's unaffordable, when it's like a required treatment for them. But across the board, I feel really comfortable with where we sit at price point wise now. It just took me 6 months to get there, where it was like having a little panic
Yeah,
attack every time I had to
yeah.
check someone out, and like, oh, your bill today is $350. It's a hard number to give someone when you're new. Hadn't worked a cash since I was in
Yeah.
high school, I think.
Yeah.
So
No,
this
that's
isn't
totally
used to
normal.
taking money from people.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm about to pay for like laser and I'm doing like 3 body parts or whatever. I think it's like 2 grand for 6 sessions each or something. And that's a sale. That was, I think, 40% off on like Black Friday. I'm like, could you imagine? It would have been pretty much like double that. So like it's a lot. It adds
And
up. But I mean,
it's hard to wrap
it's
your head around it. And
yeah.
the reality is I have to explain to someone that, this laser costs $150,000. So, and it has a shelf life. Like no matter how many like zaps you do,
Yeah.
you're eating away at that system's lifetime. So
Yeah.
you have to calculate that depreciation into the cost, and it can seem like this weird abstract number that all of these medical spas are choosing, but it's based on the quality of the machine that's treating you, and so you
Yeah.
get what you pay for sure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Cause like there's like I don't know exactly the technical term or whatever, but there's like a regular laser versus an IPL laser. And I've tried both. And like IPL is way cheaper, but like honestly, it doesn't even work. So it's like a waste of money, at least for me and like my body. So anyways, yeah, like you said, you get what you pay for. But I want to kind of like pull back and talk about the brand. I know that you mentioned your background in graphic design, and you obviously have a strong communication background as well, having, you know, written speeches and stuff. So when you worked on building the brand Bloomfield Beauty Co, what did that look like from the beginning? What was important in terms of your brand values, and from like a visual standpoint for that to kind of translate into the real world?
Mm-hmm. The brand itself was sort of like, our icon itself was repurposed from something I had created for a photographer like a year before, and she ended up using, like, going down a totally different road, and I could not stop thinking like, oh, it's so weird that she didn't pick this logo, because I thought it was the best one, and I had kind of like kept thinking about it, like, what can I use that
Hmm.
for, what can I use that for, and then I just I showed it to Annie, and she was like, yeah, I like it, it's pretty. And I rejigged it a little bit, like I fine tuned everything. I wanted the branding itself to be really clean. We took a lot of cues in the beginning from the building itself, because that is such a massive part of our brand, is just that actual space. But I wanted it to be really clean, really minimalist. That has always been my philosophy in graphic design, is like simple is best. So
Hmm.
it's evolved over the years slightly, not the brand like icon or logo itself, but like our colors we've updated when we did a renovation to the building, again pulling from inspiration from the interiors.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, it was like an easy creation process because I was very much in that space as we were building the spa. So I did the logo, I did all of the print, um, business cards and little flyers and things like that. I did our website. Uh, and now I use a graphic designer again because as we grow and have a bit more on our plate, I try and outsource as we grow.
Mhm.
And there's a graphic designer who I love working with who is a lot faster than me. Like as I found once I stopped doing graphic design, it's so easy to like lose your skill set
Yeah.
because it's such a finicky little program. And so I outsource a lot of that now, even though our brand has stayed pretty much the same, like the core of
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
I'm always open to I'm open to a rebrand in the future because I like to keep things fresh, and we've had that same branding for 6 years. But yeah, it's worked for us really well. It's a diamond with some sort of leaves coming out from the sides of it, and then just a really simple Bloomfield Beauty Company in like a sans serif uh, font, basically.
Mhm.
And all the other things around that have kind of changed, and we're really, really good about bringing in an awesome Kingston photographer, Chelsea Sisson. She does our photos usually every 6 to 9 months. We'll do like a new set of photography,
That's great.
and
I feel
her
like a lot
stuff's
of
really
people
nice
kind of
and clean.
neglect that. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people neglect the photography portion, which is really good and important to stay updated, especially for a like spa location like you. You want to stay relevant. You don't want to be reusing the same images over and over, especially
Yeah,
when it comes to social, just to like have that content, even to just like make sure your team headshots are up to date,
100%.
etc. Hmm.
Yeah,
And I,
like, the team shifts. So you've got to
yeah.
have updated headshots, updated team photos, updated services. Like we're bringing in, we've launched this many new services in the last 6 months. We got to get photos of those. You know,
Hmm.
right now I'm like, oh, do photos matter as much as video? Because as you know, like the
Right.
algorithms for all these
Get those
social,
video shoots going.
it's so stressful. Like I'm too old for this.
No, you're not.
Completely changed.
No, you're not.
That's how I feel some days. I wake up and I'm like, a video, I gotta make a reel. But in terms of that, that's been a core aspect of our branding as well, is these clean, crisp photos that are always up to date. I have literally thousands of photos at my disposal, so it's really easy for me to build content if it's photo based very quickly.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then working with that graphic designer, Kelsey Brady, who's been amazing. She just does things like, I send her an idea and she's got something back for me, in a few days. And for me, that's a huge weight off my shoulders because I kind of burnt myself out on the graphic design side and started like putting off the graphic design projects.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
And I was
Even with
just like,
agencies. Yeah. Even
oh,
like
like,
literally, like my background is design. Like that is what I did. I opened up a design agency to start. Now we're kind of like full service. So we do like marketing, social, etc.
mhm,
But same thing. I was like, disengage. Like I don't want to do it. I even hired like designers and stuff. Now we have a full team. Obviously I'm not so much on the like operation side, but yeah, it makes a huge difference. But I want to say, like, I love the fact that you paid attention to that like brand cohesion, because that's something that a lot of people forget or don't think about. Or oftentimes I feel clients will come to me and say, hey, like our issue is that we're not consistent in the way that we're presenting our brand.
mhm,
So, it's not just about the logo. That's a big thing. Everyone's like, oh, like my brand is my logo. It's the colors, it's the fonts, it's the look and feel, right? So the fact that you said, when we renovated the space and we adjusted the colors, we felt like that should be represented in our palette. And then to update that and make sure that all of your assets that you're sharing afterwards, whether it's, marketing material like flyers, through your website, on social media, that there is that cohesion throughout, because it's about building that recognition too.
mhm,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, I want
Something
the look
super
and
important to
feel.
note.
of the website to feel the same as when they actually walk into the spa.
Yeah, it's part of the
And
experience.
it's
It's part of the
the full
experience.
experience, right? Start to
Yeah.
finish, whether you're researching the spa, to booking the spa, to getting your service done, to getting those follow-up emails, all of that stuff, or you're taking home our price list, or a skincare prescription card, or any of that. That all has to
Yeah.
feel like one brand. And
Yeah.
so I was fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of that on my own in the beginning because I had that background. So I saved us a lot of that like startup cost.
Yeah.
Um, but now I'm like, I will pay someone to
Yeah.
do the price list because I
Yeah.
just don't have it in me to do that anymore. And if
Yeah.
I'm going to do it, it's going to be a 6-month ordeal. And if Kelsey
Yeah.
does it, it's 6 days, like I know that
Exactly.
I know that I put, when I had those 3 jobs, I burnt myself out so hard on all 3 that it really took me, like, I had to take a good long look at, like, okay, what am I putting my focus into? And
Hmm.
I eventually just like closed my graphic design studio because I couldn't do that and run the spa and have a life with my family. So
Yeah.
now I outsource that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something for any entrepreneur to remember is that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should,
A
right?
hundred
We've
percent.
heard it a million times, but it's like you can for sure do a bunch of different things, but like, will you be the best at it? Will you be the quickest at it?
Mhm.
Is it where your resources, or can your resources be spent better somewhere else? So to consider all of those things. So from a brand perspective, I think you're doing an awesome job. I want to talk to you about like the marketing. So when you guys started out, you were 2 sisters moving from a different area, probably didn't know too many people. How did you build that brand awareness and finally get the word out to build up the clientele that you have today, 6 years later, to the point where you're winning awards, you have an incredible staff and a incredible business?
I mean, I think in the early days, we were really lucky because Instagram was still working the way you would hope
It
it
used
would.
to. Yeah.
Like now I feel like you can post something that you think is like really great and amazing and you'll get like 18 likes and you're like, okay, like 3 years ago this would have had 250.
Yeah, I know.
And so
Crazy.
we were able to grow our Instagram and Facebook following back then, quickly.
Hmm.
And in the county, a lot, like, it's a very supportive community.
Hmm.
Of course, there's always people who are like, oh, we don't need more businesses here, and uh, but the business community itself is very supportive. And
Yes.
so when
Yeah.
we opened, we had a lot of support from um, just people in the county who were excited to have something new in Bloomfield
Hmm.
and something that maybe was a bit on a bigger scale. Um, there was a lot of tourism in those first few years, a lot of bachelorette parties, a lot of wedding parties, a lot of birthdays being held here, a lot of female, like, groups of women who are our primary target market. And yeah, I don't know, we kind of rode that wave on social because it was free
Yeah.
and that was our budget. It was
Yeah.
like $0. We didn't start paid advertising, and even then I find paid advertising online very overwhelming now. It used to be simple. You could just like log on to the back end and buy a Facebook ad for like $50, and that was
Hmm.
sort of, and when you hit your $50 limit, that was it. And now they've made that back end so complex. I'm
Hmm.
there's no way I'm doing that on my own.
Yeah.
um and so now if we're doing paid media, it might be an ad. Like, we did a year of ads in Watershed Magazine. We just ran some ads on County FM. And we'll pick and choose some smaller, like, local media.
Hmm.
But it's our marketing strategy has always been very organic. It's been a lot of just like
Word of mouth.
word of mouth, and
Yeah.
word of mouth can work both ways. Like,
Yes.
in medical aesthetics, people aren't really excited to say, like, go and tell their friends, oh, I had my lips done, because a lot of people are
Right.
still kind of judgmental about it.
Hmm.
And so, we've tried to sort of spread the word, but a lot of it happens, for more maybe day spa stuff. People are a lot more open. But even still, like self-care, people aren't going online and being like, oh, this girl does my eyebrows every weekend. It's rare. So a
Yeah.
lot of it is just organic growth. And we were able to grow in on social to a point where we had a pretty consistent clientele, and now we're kind of riding that wave. I still, am in that space, but I just find it's not as effective as it used to be unless you're
Hmm.
throwing a lot of money at it.
Right. So you're still running ads, whether it's like on Facebook and Google. You're finding they're not really effective anymore? Like,
We tried about a year and a half ago. We worked with a company out of Toronto to help us navigate that sort of ad space, and
hmm
we're not getting any return on it. So we canceled it
yeah,
after like 6 months. And obviously those things, I realize that it can be a lot of trial and error in the beginning,
yeah,
but like when
yeah.
you're a small business and,
Every dollar counts.
every dollar counts. And so
Yeah,
if I'm throwing $800 at a marketing ad, I need to see that return.
yeah.
I don't have a year to figure out why it's not working. Um, and it's not like we ask people when they book an appointment, how did you find out about us? So
hmm
it
Do
can
they
be
book
hard to
online though?
determine.
Are they
They
booking
do.
online
Most
mainly?
of our clients book online.
You should plug in a question when they book online.
I would love to have control over the booking system, but
You don't?
we didn't build it. It's a
Okay.
system that we pay for.
Okay.
It's
Got it.
very user friendly, but I don't have a lot of pull in like, can you add a question
Adding
to the
sections. Yeah.
exactly,
Because that would be
exactly.
super useful with us. The way that we work is we actually use Typeform. It's called Typeform, where we send
Yes.
in these nice design forms or whatever. So anytime a client is like requesting a proposal, or if we want to send over a Q&A to get more information on their background, it's like general questions about the client. And then in the end is where we would ask where they would have heard about us, whether
Mhm.
it's a referral from Google or somewhere else. And we make it mandatory to answer.
And I think
So
if you
like,
have the opportunity to
yeah.
build that into your systems, absolutely, that's a
Yeah,
question
because
that you will
it's
thank
kind of cool
yourself.
to hear. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly. You'll thank
It's
yourself
good to know where they're coming
for
from.
that. It's just for
Mhm.
us, like it would be a whole other manual.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, in person, it's one thing to have to remember. Number two, you don't want to make them feel like uncomfortable. Sometimes people don't like want to share that stuff,
Yeah.
like face to face. That's why it's nice to have it as like a question in the back. Like if they answer it, cool. If not, whatever. But yeah, anyone listening, like if you have an opportunity to find out where your customer is coming from, that's awesome. Especially if it's like a referral too, because then you
Mhm.
can leverage that referral and talk about that relationship with that other client, and then you're more likely to actually like close a deal and get this new person as your client if they're just inquiring, right? And if they've heard from you from somewhere else. So being able to kind of leverage that, or if they're saying like, oh, just from like Google and you're not running ads, then it's kind of confirmation that your organic SEO is doing a good
Mhm.
job,
Yeah.
you know? And there's so many different ways where you can track that too. Like if you are running ads and you have a landing page, you could see how many people are clicking your landing page, etc. If they fill out a form from that landing page, where they're coming from, all these technical things in the back end. So if ever you're interested in running ads, just know you have the ability to get this information. So ask whoever you're hiring, or if you're doing it yourself, look it up and know that it's a possibility.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, I mean, you've obviously gone through a bunch of ups and downs over the last 6 years. I can't imagine any entrepreneur who hasn't. What
Mhm.
would you say has been one of the bigger challenges that you've faced since launching?
I mean, when I look at the 6 years as a whole, I always think that the most work goes into human resources. It's
Mm-hmm.
just any business owner in the county will tell you that staffing is difficult. It's
Everywhere now, I
especially,
feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
in the county, it's been difficult for the last six
Years.
years, in my personal experience.
Right.
We also only hire a very specific subset of
Mm-hmm.
employable people. So we want our estheticians to have their college degree in aesthetics and spa management, and we want our nurses have gone through nursing school, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and so our pool of qualified candidates is quite small. Um, it's a little bit easier to find nurses now because the healthcare system is just has been really hard on them. And so if we ever post a nursing job, that one might be easier to fill because there's a lot of nurses that are moving into medical aesthetics. But aestheticians are hard to find in this area. And most of our
Mm-hmm.
staff commute from Belleville or Trenton or Tweed. Like one of our nurses comes from Tweed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's trying to convince them of that. And when you lose someone, they're very hard to replace. It's a lot of
Yeah.
training that we do at
Yeah.
our spa. So our nurses, for instance, are trained for 6 months side by side with Annie before they take on a full range of different services. And so that's very time consuming, very intensive training. I think people are like, oh, well, who's been doing it the longest? I want to book with them. And I'm like, there's really no difference in their skill set after 6 months of Annie being like, okay,
This
here's
is
how we
exactly
do
how we
this.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
And
quality control is important too, I'm
the
sure,
quality
especially when
control
like in
for
the
us
beauty
is,
industry. Yeah.
yes, it's very important that, and it's always been important to Annie and I, that you have the ability to request a specific provider for the service out of who provides that service.
Mm-hmm.
But if that person, who you booked with calls in sick, I need to know that that client can go to someone else on the team and get the exact same quality of service.
Yeah.
And that when you're talking about medical aesthetics, that we are using the world-renowned standards in medical aesthetics, and that those injection points are the same. They might vary based on your facial structure
Right.
and what you need, but like Annie needs to be able to approve those injections, know that if she's not in the room, that you're doing exactly what she would have done.
Yeah.
And so we
So
have
she's
very
kind of
strict
like that prime
standards.
example. Yeah.
Yeah. And we, our nurses inject based on something called the MD codes. There's different codes based on what you're doing, how much you're putting in. And those don't change necessarily, from appointment to appointment. It's like that's how you're trained in this type of filler. And so, I feel very comfortable knowing that I can book a client with literally anyone on the team, and they're going to have an exceptional service.
Yeah, that's cool. I know that there is a college nearby, Loyalist
Yeah.
College, that offers training in aesthetics and stuff. I'm not sure how many like parallels there may be with their program and what you guys offer, but have you ever considered, I mean, this goes for any industry that has these like trades that they're teaching students. Have you ever considered kind of communicating with their department to see like who's graduating? Would you be willing to
Yeah.
take on a
So
student?
it's funny that you mentioned that. Almost all of our estheticians have come from the Loyalist program, which
Oh,
makes
there
it
you go.
very easy because a lot of they have the same techniques coming out of
Yes.
college,
Yeah.
even just for how do they move around a face, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And so we have a really strong relationship with the aesthetics program there. I have regular chats with the program director. I've started actually going every semester to meet with the aesthetic students, and where I
Oh,
talk about
cool.
Bloomfield Beauty Company, I talk about what I look for in an esthetician, I talk about how you make money in the industry, I talk about what they should be looking for in a job opportunity. Like
I love that.
here are the standards of your employment contract that you should be looking for at a baseline. Um, so I have I usually do like a 1 hour in classroom session with the students. It's been really helpful in helping to find placement students, because you'll see there's, in every class, there'll be like 3 or 4 of them whose eyes are like lit up and they are engaged and they're asking lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones where I'm like, okay, email me after and you can do
Yes.
your
Yeah.
placement with us.
Yeah.
And
I kind of
so
did the
we
same
always
thing
take
with their
placement students.
advertising program.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
I did the same
perfect.
thing with the advertising program. I actually hired one of their students to create social content for us this past year.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's it works out, honestly. Like it is tough though, but like you said, it's like I watched them present and there was one person that really stood out and I was like, let's talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's excuse me, I feel like it might be a little more difficult with like what you're doing. It's like you seem to think, let me go for the person whose like eyes are lit up and who seems to be the most interested and like eager to learn, because at the end of the day, everything can be learned, right?
Yeah, and I mean, again, we have a robust training program. We do a tiered training approach with any new
Mm-hmm.
esthetician. So if you're straight out of college, you start on manis and pedis, and you might not get a paying client until you don't get a paying client until your manis and pedis are perfect. So
What do you
we're
mean a paying client? Because they do it for free?
they'll do it on the other staff, they'll do it on me, they'll do a manicure
Okay,
pedicure on
got it.
Annie, we'll bring in my mom, my daughter, like I'll bring in
Can I come in
our
next
friends.
time?
Sure, you want to be a volunteer? You might go home with a crappy manicure, but
That's okay.
I'm not gonna ask someone to pay for anything until I know that it's gonna be high quality
The way
100%
you want it to
of the
be. Yeah.
time. And so again, no matter who it is on the team, we have a really strict training program. And that's why it can be hard to replace someone when they leave. And it's why we work so hard to keep our staff
Mm,
super happy. We want just the energy of the space to be really healthy. And, we want everyone on the team to be excited to come to work,
hmm.
including us. And as soon as the vibes are off, it doesn't make me have a fun work day. So I'm always nipping that stuff in the bud. Like it's just, that's where the HR side of it, I think there's so many open variables to people management. What makes one person tick, the other person on staff doesn't care.
Hmm.
Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by more time off. Some people are motivated by like a consistent schedule. Some people want flexibility. Like they're just all so different.
Yeah.
And so you really have to keep your pulse on that because
Yeah.
in the county, especially when you lose people, that you're going to take a hit because it's going to take you a little while to find someone new, find someone who is great at their job and who loves being a part of your team.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I would say that's the hardest part. Um, we've obviously hit other hurdles. There are other stressful things that have happened in the 6 years, but consistency wise, the HR
Yeah.
side of it is the most demanding for sure.
Yeah. I think
That's why the
in
Employer of the Year award was like so meaningful. It's because you're like,
right.
oh, that's the thing I worked the hardest on. So that's the
That's it.
award that meant the most to me. Um, and it is nice to be recognized for your hard work, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have such a long list of things that you offer for your employees and anyone that works with you guys that I'm sure anyone in any job would love and appreciate. And I think it's so important to pay attention and listen to your team and what it is that they need. Like you said, everyone's a little bit different. You obviously can't please everyone all the time, but if you are asking the questions and engaging and understand them and what they want generally, like as a whole, as a team. And typically, you're also hiring people who have similar values to you. So hopefully, there are a lot of parallels, right, in the people that you bring on board. But listening to that and then acting on it and not just kind of like sitting back, because a happy team is really the way that you can retain your team. Like you said, it's so hard to find new people. So the last thing you want to do is see them go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally dealing with this right now. One of my incredible project managers got offered an opportunity to go back to her old job. Her previous boss gave her an offer she couldn't refuse. She's only been with me for like 6 months. So it was like short lived, but I had done such a rigorous interview process for this role because I knew how integral it was. It's
Mm-hmm.
client facing. You need to have a lot of knowledge on all of our services to be able to run and lead these projects. And so I went back to the top candidates that I had shortlisted and sent them emails. And I was so lucky that all three of the ones that I reached out to said that they were still interested and still available to take on this freelance role. So it saved me all of that time and effort
Mm-hmm.
from having to put out another job post, relook, redo all the interviews. Cause like when I say rigorous interview process, there were probably like 4 or 5 rounds of interviews.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, because I've done this so many times before that I was like, I need to find like the perfect person and make sure. And I mean, look, even after all of that, this is what happens. But the good thing is that I had that cushion and those other
Yeah.
contacts that I was able to rely back on. And it wasn't like a traditional interview process. I would send them questions and they would send me videos back. They're called looms. So I can see how they would interact or react to a certain situation. Like, oh, if a client does this, how would you respond? Or what do you think about this trend in the market? Like, just to see how they think, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, it was interesting. But all that to say is that pay attention to who you're bringing on board and keep listening to them while they're on board because you want them to stick around. Hiring is really, really challenging. So I'm sure every entrepreneur can relate with that. Before we say goodbye, Emma, I always end the podcast with what I call the mindful minute, where you have an opportunity to share a piece of advice or a learning that you've experienced throughout your life, whether it's personal or business, that you want to leave with everyone listening today.
Ooh, no pressure. One thing that Annie and I have always said since the beginning is the sort of the saying that we have lived by is no risk, no reward.
Mhm.
And I think that sort of encompasses where we're at now after 6 years. We're seeing the rewards of having this business. We love the lifestyle that we are able to have because of Bloomfield Beauty Company. That first year, those first 2 years were really, we were head down working our butts off. And we took some big risks, not just for us personally, but also for our families. Um, Financial risk, obviously.
Yeah.
And while we had a really robust support system, there were definitely people who questioned, like, what are you doing? Neither of you know this industry very well. And that
Yeah.
was a fair, you know, um,
Judgment.
judgment on their
Yeah.
part. I felt a lot of confidence in our ability to teach ourselves how to really do this and how to do it well.
Yeah.
And I knew that between the two of us, we could form enough of a base to really make this a special business, a special place to come and visit. And I knew that Annie was so talented in her abilities and her work ethic. And so I felt very confident in our partnership. But we definitely took some big risks. But I don't think we would be where we're at if we hadn't. And if I had listened to sort of the naysayers or the people who were throwing all those questions at me, and I took that really to heart, and I started to question myself, I think we would be in a very different place right now. Um, and I'm happy that we did it, obviously. And I just feel like that is the thing about small business is that you got to take those risks in the
Yeah.
beginning. Obviously, you want them to be calculated and you want to have done your homework and you want to know
Hmm.
that your partner is, if you have a partner, that's someone that you can rely on 100% of the time. And I'm so happy that I have that in my sister. But yeah, I feel like now, we have this lovely business that can do its thing without us there all of the time, and we can sort of go back to having our lives and take on big home renovation projects, or like
Yeah.
go to our kids like sporting events. And
Yeah.
we gave that up in the beginning, but it's worth it, down the road. So
No
for
risk, no reward.
if you're thinking about taking that big leap, you can do it. You might just have a rough couple of years like we did in the
Yeah.
beginning, where you're working 3 jobs to make sure you can pay your bills, but you'll get there eventually. You just have to really push yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I think that a lot of it has to do with like the belief aspect, just like believing you can do it. The second you start doubting yourself and feeling like you can't do it, then it's like your mind just takes you down that path, right? Where it's like if you persevere and believe that you can achieve and hit a certain level of success, then you will. Like
Yeah,
you will.
put
It's
that out
literally a
into the
mind game.
universe. A hundred
Yeah.
percent. You put it out into the
Yeah.
universe. It's the laws of attraction. It's manifestation, whatever you want to call it. And if you hit that hurdle where you find something that you feel uncomfortable doing yourself or feel like a fish out of water, like outsource it, research
Mm-hmm.
it. Like I'm now at the point where like in the beginning I researched it and did it myself, and now I'm at the
Yeah,
point where I research it, I'm like, I still don't want to do it, I'm outsourcing this.
that's
And
it.
that's how you maintain your sort of sanity through all this.
Mm-hmm.
Is you can't be everything to everyone. You can't be the person running the front desk and building the strategy and doing the finances and doing the injections. You have to divide and conquer. You have to delegate. We're really lucky. Our staff are very engaged. And so even when I say I have experts surrounding me, I also mean our staff. Like
Yeah,
I
of
will look to
course.
them to say, what's the latest in the
Yeah.
industry that we're not doing?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of supplies do we need that you don't have? Whatever it may be. So
Yeah.
surround yourself with a support network and experts in fields that you may feel uncomfortable in, that you can maybe give a quick call to, or hire a consultant. Like, for me, fine tuning those systems, like inventory systems, I had never worked with an inventory system based on my background. And so for me, like, I needed a consultant to tell me how to do inventory.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
We have so many resources available at our
mm-hmm.
fingertips. It's really like get on Google and figure it out. Like you can totally figure it out. Everyone, so many, not everyone, so many people have done it, right? And they all
Yes.
started in the same place with
Yeah.
little knowledge. Like you don't wake up a genius with knowledge in a certain field, like everyone has to start somewhere. So I totally agree. No risk, no reward. Get comfortable being uncomfortable and
Yes.
just recognize that it's like in those failures and those mistakes is where you're going to learn the most. So don't be
100%.
afraid of them, embrace them. I love this. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Emma. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you can find me at Bloomfield Beauty Company most of the time. Either sitting at the bar, like typing away on my computer, because I gave up my office for a treatment room. Sometimes I'm at the front desk. I still love working the front desk. Like if one of the front desk girls calls in sick, I'm like, I'm there. I love it. I love chatting with all the clients. So,
Love that.
social media, everybody can find us on Instagram and Facebook. I started a TikTok account. I've done nothing with it, but the handle is always
It's that video content.
right. That video content is so scary. I'm like, I'm over 40. I don't know what I'm doing. Uh, so at Bloomfield Beauty Co. And
Amazing.
yeah, we thank you so much for having me. This is my very first podcast experience, and it was
Oh,
so
fun.
fun and easy. So thank you, Alyssa.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm so glad we were able to get you on our award-winning business. We're so proud of you. I'm sure you're so proud of yourself and your team. For everyone listening, I hope you learned a thing or two from Emma, and we'll chat next week. Bye.